Damn, I loved this conversation. Today I'm chatting with Jeanell English, the co-founder of Elizabeth and Minnie, a new publishing company dedicated to discovering and promoting and making IP for bodies of culture.
I do think, though, we are living in a time that hasn't changed that much in terms of it being really hard for Black and Brown people in particular to be the beneficiaries of capitalism.
It is a beautiful conversation that is about publishing, but really it's about entrepreneurship and rest and play and thinking outside the box and taking risk and knowing your creative valuation. How much are you worth, y'all?
You are a single straight man, or you're a queer woman out there just wanting to connect on a different level. Join a book club. Like, people are saying run clubs are it. You don't even have to run. You don't have to break a sweat. You can come have a glass of wine and chat and show up and sound super intellectual and get some numbers. I'm just saying.
So get into it. Enjoy. I'll see you on the other side.
Hi, my name is Jeanell English, and I am an entrepreneur who is so excited to be approaching the end of the year because I'm tired, y'all. It is hard.
How are you resting?
That's a great question. Rest for me, I actually discovered a new approach to rest that was inspired by this book by Trisha Hersey called Rest is Resistance. And I discovered it after I left my last, I guess, more traditional job at the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. And this book really challenged me to reimagine what rest looks like in my own life. So, long answer, but what I have discovered is rest is not necessarily a nap. It's not necessarily sleeping. It's not necessarily sleeping in, but it's really finding the ways to re-energize myself by being surrounded by what inspires me. And the whole premise of the book reminds us that when we are not rested, when we are continuing to work at a pace and with the prioritization of capitalism that we're often groomed to have, it makes it impossible to really resist, challenge, think creatively and differently in ways that can evolve the systems that are actually oppressive. And so for me, rest in this season has been finding ways to immerse myself in art and new forms of art. It's been grounding myself with walks with my dog, Duke Ellington. He's a vibe. It is just spending time with those who are closest to me. My community is beautiful and big and bright, and my closest friends are literally my family. And I'm making time to be in spaces and places with them that just feel really healing. So yeah, that's rest. It's a lot of things that actually sounds like things to do, but it all recharges me.
Can I play devil's advocate?
Please.
You're an entrepreneur of a new business, which you
Mhm.
can talk about. But before you do, we will talk about it. How can you resist the system that you're in, right? Like, in order to start a new business, you have to play by the rules of capitalism. It needs to do well. At least you want it to do well. It doesn't need to do anything. But you left your job and started something for a reason.
I
So what
love
is that dance?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and at the end of the day, we all want to make money. We all want to feel comfortable. I'm not mad at that, right? I do think, though, we are living in a time that hasn't changed that much in terms of it being really hard for Black and Brown people in particular to be the beneficiaries of capitalism, right? And that requires just a critical exploration of systems. So when I left my job, and I think what's super interesting is the majority of my career has been doing equity, inclusion, diversity type of work. But for me, when I take these jobs, I do so intentionally to have a really macro view of what's happening in a specific industry and a specific part of the world that I'm curious about exploring. And I'm able to see what barriers actually exist. So take my time at the academy, right? Incredibly rewarding, incredibly challenging. I was exhausted, burnt out, all the things. And I realized a big part of where that burnout was coming from was advocating for communities that weren't in a seat and a position of power within the entertainment industry. And that took me down the critical exploration of why. And I started to see that a lot of our communities didn't own enough of the IP to be in a position of power within entertainment. And one of the solutions that I then navigated, right, was this literary world, which for me is investment in story. And story is the foundation of an industry that I, really love and admire. And that's really the arts and entertainment space. It starts with story. I started to look at adaptation rates and, what books were inspiring film and TV projects. And I went through 90 different film and TV titles that were adapted from books in 2023. And over 80% of those books were written by white authors. That's great. Some of these projects were incredible, right? But where were the books of my community, the communities I was advocating for? Why weren't they getting adapted? And for me, having this seat at the table within entertainment through the academy just gave me a really interesting vantage point to assess the industry from a different lens. I leverage what I found there to build a business. And I would not build a business without building out a financial model to back it. I did go to business school. I was curious at the time. I'm like, why am I spending all this money doing this? What's going to be the purpose of this in my life? My God, everything happens for a reason. And I learned how to data model, how to do financial planning. I barely made it through accounting, but I'm glad I took that class, right? And I was able to build out a business model that made sense. And when it really, really made sense is when I was introduced to my business partner who was building out a core part of the business that I didn't have yet. And that's when it made sense, right? For us, we now run a book publishing company called Elizabeth and Minnie. It's very much community centered. I think you have a lot of traditional publishers, and communities that are saying, hey, like we're writing these books, but I don't actually know how to sell them. And that's because we're undervaluing the significance of community. So what Tanya, my business partner, brought was this thriving book club community of readers who we're actively wanting to share space and talk about books and celebrate books and help sell books and just love of story. And with that piece, the business model then started to make sense because there's ways that you can monetize the community. There's, of course, our bread and butter is selling books. So you're now very clear on what these communities are looking for from books. And it just makes it a lot easier to insert a market that's honestly one of the oldest within the art world, and that's in literature and publishing.
So publishing, supposedly, you tell me, is struggling.
So
So they say. You say no.
So they say. I mean, it's a $1 billion industry for a reason. The US is, the largest market for book consumers. And I think what's
Really?
been so interesting, yeah, in really doing my research and entering into this space is when you look at who readers are, right? Who are they? What's the profile? And typically readership increases along with education rates. And what we've seen, especially since 2020, is an increase in higher education and degrees from communities of color and specifically women. And I'll say Latina women specifically and Black women specifically. That's where you've seen the most growth. And I believe in 2020, it was like 62% of Asian women were pursuing advanced degrees as well, right? So you have this natural community of readers who are growing, yet the traditional model of the industry hasn't necessarily seen or figured out how to tap into those communities. And maybe it's because there wasn't an initial high valuation, right? Or maybe it was simply like not having the access or understanding how to engage. And it's likely a little bit of both. But for us, this industry exists. It's making money, right? It definitely is making money still, and we want to focus on a small subset of that and super serve that community and super serve these readers that are starting to enter into this book consumer space.
And that's Black and brown women of higher ed.
Yes, exactly. And interestingly, that makes up the majority of the book club that Tanya and I now facilitate. When people ask us, who's your book club, right? You have over 10,000 members and it's growing. And it's like, well, we call them our book besties. They're primarily women of color with disposable income who have different careers, who are craving different types of conversation and community, who want to travel together, who want to read together, who want to explore together. And that's been like really incredible, right? You create a space where you facilitate that sort of engagement, and naturally people just start to convene.
Can we go back to let's rewind
Yeah.
for my entrepreneurs listening. There are
Hmm.
authors listening who I'm sure will be like, how do I submit? Uh, but for entrepreneurs listening, or maybe someone who wants to quit their job or start their own thing in a market that might be supposedly quote unquote saturated or
Yeah.
quote unquote dying, why, how'd you leave? Why'd you start? Like, what's the actual process of, is it so easy? Are you chilling? Like, what's the, yeah.
It is not easy. Oh my goodness. It is so hard. And I really appreciate that question because I feel like so often we talk to entrepreneurs who have quote unquote made it or sold a company or have gotten to this level of success, but we don't focus on the beginning and what it takes, right? It's hard. I would say, and like before you leave any job or financial security or whatever, you need to really be thoughtful about what you need. You need to be very thoughtful about budgeting. I, have a very tight budget that I live against now. I also, when I
You
left,
mean
I,
personally? You don't mean as a business. You mean like as a human?
as a human, yeah, as
Like
on.
Duke Ellington doesn't get first class.
Oh, no, Duke Ellington does not get first class tickets. Duke Ellington's back on the kibble diet right now. You got to really think about what you're spending your money on and what you need to spend your money on to make yourself really happy. My shopping budget got cut like completely. I don't shop anymore. I rent almost everything I wear these days. And that was intentional, right? There's sacrifices that you do make when you're in the building phase. I have put everything, when I say everything into this company because I believe in it. And I believe that the communities I'm centering in this work have been undervalued. And I believe it is going to be the most valuable and rewarding investment I ever make on an altruistic level, but also like financially. I believe it. I think you have to be a little delusional, a little delulu as well to go down this path because you get used to hearing no, you get used to telling people what's not going to work about something. And you have to just be so clear about what you're doing that you keep going. I also was very thoughtful about setting myself up to ensure that I had some sort of income, right? So I do have the publishing company that I'm building. I also have a consulting company that I run, and my consulting company has technically been active since 2020. I haven't really done any consulting projects when I was in a full-time role, but the structure was there. And when I left my role at the academy, I was able to line up some specific consulting clients that provided me with some income to make sure, again, my personal budget, my bills were being paid. I will tell you though, again, it is really not easy. And the things that keep me up at night are when I think too far ahead. And I say too far ahead because I think a big part of being an entrepreneur, yes, there's some future and forward planning for your business, but for yourself and your mind, you can go down a dark, dangerous path of what is it going to look like when I retire? I don't have any more funding in my retirement plans because I put it all here, right? And then you're sitting up at night and you're like, what's going to happen? Thank God for edibles because I would not sleep time, right? Like it's hard because we are conditioned to believe that success looks a specific way. And right now, this is the season of throwing out everything I believed and just trusting myself and having a lot of faith in what I'm doing.
Uh, they say anxiety is, future based, and depression is past paced.
Yeah.
Like when we're harping on our past, there is a sort of depressive quality. But when that heart is beating faster than it should and that mind is working faster than it should, it's future based, and goes back to that age old, like, can I just be here? You said you threw things out. What you throw out mentally, like spiritually? What are we
Um,
abandoning? I often say, what stories must die so new ones can grow? Uh,
Ooh, okay. I love that. We can tell you're a writer. I'm like, yes. Okay. What has to die to create space? I, there's a lot of things I've had to let go of. Some have been unhealthy relationships, friendships, partnerships, things that weren't,
for the business to grow.
yes, for the business to grow. I think so often we segment professional and personal, right? To make it make sense for us and to feel like this is more palatable and easier to navigate. But the reality is they're so intertwined. And I know for me, I'm very much an empath. I connect deeply with people and I absorb their energy, their feelings, their sentiments. And when I'm in a space of growth, I have to be moving with this mindset of abundance, with this, call it Delulu again, but like with this insane belief in myself that, okay, I'm building, it's going to be great, it's going to work out. So I've had to let go of certain people who brought energy into my life that was really from a place of scarcity, who believed, that the world is very much a zero sum game, right? If you take from one, someone else loses, and that just wasn't what I needed creatively to be able to build.
That comes up a lot in this show, because this show centers itself on bodies of culture. And I think what whiteness has conditioned us
Mm-hmm.
in any field is that there's only so much room at the top.
That part.
And so if Janelle gets her publishing company, well then fuck me. Like if you get your success, well then I don't get mine. And that is, that's like the great trick that whiteness has the great shroud they've placed under us
Yeah.
is that we're still fighting each other versus cooperating with each other.
You are preaching right now. Like, Chris, this is literally, you're absolutely preaching. And I feel that so intensely. We get challenged a lot as we're building out our publishing company because we'll celebrate even on our socials other books or we'll promote other books that we didn't publish.
Hmm.
And for me, that's fine. Like when one of us wins, we all win. If we can help elevate and build a relationship with a talented author and help bring their books, especially into the entertainment sector with, authenticity, then that's a win for us. That's an investment in, again, this collective moving differently. So I love that I don't have to play by traditional rules in building my own company, and coming from literally 100-year-old institution in entertainment where everything was rules and yes, and this is what success looks like, and you need the Oscar and you need this. I'm now questioning all of that. And in order to do that, I did have to consciously remove certain things from my life, honestly. It's hard, but
What's the role of play in this process? So I believe rest is important. I believe a little bit of delusion is important. I consider myself a bit of an entrepreneur, and I know that there is delusion and wild perseverance and resilience when you get said no to, and you're just like, no, I know what it is. I know it's worth.
yeah.
Um, I've been talking about, people will get, they'll be like, here he goes again. But it just really hit me. It really hit me where I was like, oh, all these like white billionaires, before they even sell the product, they say their company's worth billions of dollars before they even sell anything.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's the lesson we all need in a way,
Yeah.
like know your worth.
That part.
Know your worth.
That part, creative valuation is like, it can be so subjective. And it's also,
Creative valuation. Yeah,
yeah,
beautiful.
it's, whoever is on the receiving end of how you valued what you're building, they might challenge it or they might buy into it. And more often than not, right, as a entrepreneur who's now in the middle of a capital raise and meeting primarily with investors who are not Black, brown, Asian, etc. That's just not as deep of pockets there. The biggest challenge is on the valuation. And I'm like, that's one of the greatest, I think, barriers to raising the capital that a lot of us are looking for to break through is there's not that shared belief in terms of the value of our communities. And you can bring in all the data, you can do all the research, you can throw out dollars and cents and growth of community and all of this, right? But at the end of the day, you need someone on the other end of that who has the ability to say yes to also believe and understand how you arrived at your valuation. That's a different level of self,
Mm.
right? It's a very different layer. But play for me, to your earlier question, I think it's just as important. I love, again, building and being able to play outside of the lines of traditional publishing. Neither Tanya or I are necessarily inspired or intrigued by some like major headlines or chasing certain, periodicals. Instead, we get the opportunity to meet really interesting people, especially through investment connectors who are playing with content in such cool and innovative ways, and that's inspiring. Like the most rewarding rooms that I'm in now are in ones where, people aren't from and they didn't grow up in a specific industry that's attached to entertainment or the arts. They're just like, well, what if this? What if that? And you're able to throw out these ideas. And one of the concepts we're toying with now, I can't drop it here, but it's probably going to piss off a lot of traditional artists,
Drop it. Drop it.
right? Like, you'll get the exclusive next time. But like, it's just cool to be able to be surrounded by creative minds and just throw out ideas. I was raised by an artist and a therapist. My dad's a painter, like a classically trained painter. And growing up in our house, we were super expressive kids, like probably weird. I say we because I have a sister, definitely weird. We were not like the traditionally cool kids or whatever, but we were encouraged to play and explore and just imagine everything in such a vibrant way that now one of the greatest joys I have in building my own company is being able to do that and not feeling like I need to filter that side of myself. And equally finding that in a business partner has been so fun. Like, every day is fun. Some days I'm like, we got to focus, we got to get this done, prioritize. But that's the other piece that I've learned in all of this. We don't have to build alone. And in fact, it's so much more enjoyable when you're building with someone else. And in addition to finding someone who has complementary skills or contributions to what you're growing, it's also about that personality piece. Who can you play with and have a really good time with? Because this shit's hard. It's really hard.
Who found who? You or your partner?
So we were actually introduced to each other, and another woman, this Black woman in entertainment, a mutual friend of ours, connected us. I was having lunch with her one day, and she was like, Jeanell, you don't have to do everything on your own. I think you should meet this woman who's playing in this similar space and intentional use of play, because that's what we were doing. And I think like y'all should just meet. Like, maybe there's something there, maybe there's not. I don't know. And yeah, she connected us. We were supposed to jump on a 30-minute exploratory call. And I had my guard up because Tanya, my business partner, she was on Real Housewives of Atlanta. And me being judgy, I was like, I don't know who the housewife. What is this? But we were supposed to be on for 30 minutes. That 30-minute call turned into 2.5 hours, turned into her jumping on a flight from Atlanta to LA the next week. and us locking ourselves into a space here in LA and just mapping out what this integrated business would look like. And that's how Elizabeth and Minnie was born. I was building Elizabeth before I met Tanya. Elizabeth was my great grandmother. And I met Tanya and discovered and learned a lot about Minnie, her grandmother.
Mm.
And her grandmother's first job when she had immigrated to Canada, which is where Tanya grew up, was in publishing. And for me, my great grandmother, I found all of these letters that she wrote years ago, and I was compelled to name my business Elizabeth because I'm like, oh my God, these stories are beautiful. Where would her words have gone if I hadn't discovered them? And I don't want to have beautiful stories get lost anymore if I can help be a vehicle to bring it to the world.
Mm.
And yeah, that's honestly how it happened. It was just like a random connection that felt right. We are both very intuitive in that sense. Our birthdays came to find out are 2 days apart. So maybe that was part of it. It's like, oh, I'm talking to a
What are
version.
you?
Oh, I'm a Sagittarius, Sag
Okay.
season. We love it.
So you're both Sages.
We're both Sages.
Sag squared.
Yes, Sag squared. And it worked out. So yes, here we are.
And you lived in LA, so you know your rising and your moon and all that stuff.
Of course I do. Yes.
If you share it, I'm sure hundreds of listeners will be like, well, of course you started a business. It means this. Like,
Of course, I know. I mean, yeah, people aren't surprised when I also share I'm a Libra rising, very organized and all these things. So people are like, oh, I thought you might have been a Libra. And I'm like, oh, that's my rising.
I'm a
Yeah.
double Leo with a Virgo moon.
Are you? I have
I
a Virgo
am.
moon too. We share
Oh,
that.
nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Good. I love it.
Yes.
Coming together. You only hang out with people who share the same,
Exactly.
clearly.
Well, and Leos are like the compatible sign for Sagittarius. My two best
Oh, I
friends
didn't know that.
are Leos. My sister's a Leo, and
Mm.
then one of my other best friends, he's also a Leo. And yeah, so we're like, we just vibe. Sag and Leos, we go together. Same.
Okay, to the many writers listening, how do they work with you? Are you open to things? What's the process?
We're definitely open to things. You can always submit. You can submit on our website, elizabethminnie.com. And we, take submissions from unagented authors, from agented authors. Everyone finds their way into this space in different ways. So feel free to submit. It takes about, at this point, or it's like 8 weeks for us to review everything. I think what's interesting and what I love about Tanya and I is we read everything we get. Like we have weekly meetings where we discuss every submission that was allocated to us that week. So it's best to go through our website just so we have it in the queue and we can get through it. We look for, right now, we're primarily looking for fantasy, and we're looking for works of fiction. So those are the spaces that we're playing in now. We tend to look for books that have strong potential for adaptation, again, wanting to help shift the industry on the entertainment side as well. And we have production partnerships in place where we're bringing some of these titles before they even get published to production companies, again, Black and Brown production companies, to give them the opportunity to play with some IP, right? And that is also a need when you reflect on the macro of the entertainment industry, is how do you level the playing field of giving really great stories to all of these incredible production companies that are popping up and maybe don't have the capital to compete with a Universal, right, to acquire the rights for a book.
You also do these vacations, right? Or there these getaways, these hangs. Can you talk
Yeah.
about them or how people can hang with you?
Oh my goodness, our Get Lit and Travel program, pun intended, Get Lit and Travel. It really is. Like, it's a lot of fun. This last year, we actually took a group of 30 women to Ghana with us. And what's really beautiful about these travel experiences is books are really the backdrop of them. And this trip to Ghana, we met with two different African authors. We had salon dinners while we were there, and they gave very different perspectives about African culture. One author was this Ghanaian queer guy, incredibly smart, very provocative thoughts on what's happening in Ghana. The other author, this really incredible, smart, vibrant Nigerian author. They both wrote such different books, and the conversations were so unique, but they resonated with our book club community for different reasons. So the book trips, they're incredible. Get lit and travel with us. We are getting ready to announce our upcoming trips for 2025. So it's a good time to be chatting.
Any places?
We do have some domestic trips happening. It's a bit of a surprise for our international trip, so I won't share just yet. And yeah, but it's always somewhere different. It's always an incredible group. Although we might take a group back to Ghana because that trip was so special for everyone who went. It was most everyone's first time going to the continent, and we got such great feedback that we might bring that one back in time.
And how? Is it only women?
No, oh my goodness. It happens to be women. It's happened to be on this last trip. But again, like when we look at the greatest consumers of books right now, and also like our own brand, we've been primarily engaging women of color. We do have some active male readers in our book club, and I'm hoping they show up for the next trip. I also think for any single men who just want to beat women, come join us.
This is good.
It's really like if you are a single straight man, or you're a queer woman out there just wanting to connect on a different level, join a book club. Like people are saying run clubs are it. You don't even have to run. You don't have to break a sweat. You can come have a glass of wine and chat and show up and sound super intellectual and get some numbers. I'm just saying. Like it's great.
We're giving out dating advice.
Yes.
All right, so how do all the singles join the book club? Is there a sign up? Is there?
Everything's on our website, elizabethminnie.com. You can join, you can get involved. We also run the Soho House LA book clubs as well. So if you are a Soho House member, we're about to announce the winter read in January. So you can sign up to get involved as well in the app. But it's just like, it's really come as you are. Come as you are, read with us, hang out, talk books, meet some really cool authors. Maybe talk about your own books. All exciting.
Do you have a favorite book?
Oh, this is one of the hardest questions because I feel like it changes. So my classic favorites, things that I read every year, I always reread
Every year?
I always reread The Alchemist. It's like a classic book. And I like to read it at the beginning of the year because I find something different in that book every time I read it. It's like, oh, I needed this. I'm on this journey. And this is the moment that I
under my feet.
Yes.
All along.
Here, right. So I reread that a lot. My favorite books that I read growing up were actually Archie comics. I love a graphic novel. I love when people find and bring new things to me in that capacity. We just finished reading a book that I really liked called Sky Full of Elephants by Sibo Campbell. Really beautifully written, very thoughtful. Premise of the book: we all wake up one day and all of the white people in the country have drowned themselves in the nearest body of water.
Jesus Christ.
Right? And that's like one. So I say that that's page one because that's not actually what the book is about, but it does make you critically think about structure, racial hierarchy, how we exist in this country, where we find value. So it's a really good one too.
That's really epic. Yeah, a lot of beautiful minds out here in the world.
Yes.
Making beautiful things. No, really. It's like I think it's one of the things I think about with Hollywood that is so, as someone who's in the system and has had a lot of beautiful benefits from it, we make so much bad shit. They were so afraid to take risk. We're so afraid to take risk, and there's so many brilliant people out there with unique, original ideas,
Mhm.
instead of, just we keep recycling and, remaking or recycling,
Yeah.
everything. Like we just, that's the version of recycling I think we don't need.
It's hard.
Every other way, I'm like, fashion, yes, like
Yes,
our
yes.
stuff, yes, but we don't need the same story told again and again and again. Um, when there's so many minds creating beautiful things. So I'm on the same page with you.
As you were, talking about that, and just your time being within the system of entertainment in Hollywood, I'm curious what you feel needs to change, most and most urgently, we should say, like as you're reflecting on state of industry.
Yeah, I think it's everything we said. In one version, it's risk taking. Like I loved when, he won the Academy Award for American Fiction, and he said, instead of making one movie that cost 50 million, make 50 movies that cost like, um, and you have a higher shot at things being beautiful. You
Mm.
know,
Mhm.
uh, I think that's so true. And at the same time, I think about what we just said about. Uh, I'm very fortunate to be making a film right now, and when I was trying to make a film that was cheap,
Mhm.
people were less willing to make that. But when I made it more expensive, it's so funny how more people got involved.
Oh, yes.
It's such a trip.
The valuation of it all, right?
It's like it's still a trip in my mind. That's why all this like stuff is so fresh for me, is because
Mhm.
it's literally in my, I'm seeing it happen.
Mhm.
Um and and so Hollywood needs a lot of change. What it needs the most is people like you, is other entrepreneurs. People have heard me say this a billion times, and I will say it until it is actuality. People like us need to be check signers, not check receivers.
Yes.
I love a fat check. I really do. But things start to change when the people like us are signing them.
Yep,
And the people who look like us and come from where we come from start to say, this has value.
absolutely.
This needs to be in the world. This deserves legs and tentacles and arms and universes, and multiverses.
Yeah, yeah. Couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. And I agree. I do think we're starting to see some of that shift. And I really hope to see more investments, from, those of us who have fought so hard to get to certain places in our careers in this entertainment space. Like when you are now in a position to write a check or to open a door, are you doing it?
Oh,
And
yeah. I mean, that's a whole other wow.
yeah,
Like a lot of people talk the talk, but they're still deeply in that zero sum mentality. And when the time actually comes to do something that you often know they can do it, I think there is a bit of fear in them. I think there is a bit of like, oh, it's nice to talk about helping my people, but actually helping my people.
yeah.
And that, I mean, I don't know what shifts that, but yeah.
I mean, that's a whole layer of, I think, unconditioning that needs to like happen. And it's actually one of the themes we explored with our group in Ghana too, is just this, like how we valued even white proximity within the creative sector and the arts, and how that shows up when those of us who are able to invest time, money, resources, or facilitate access in some capacity, are we doing that authentically within and amongst our own communities, or are we still wanting to support or be connected or celebrate something that already exists, and play with the same IP over and over again, to your point, right? Like, is that the safer bet? So it's a fun world that we're playing in right now.
I have this line from a play of mine, and I think there's a version of it in Brown Enough where it says, since I was a child, I have believed the story that the hand I hold determines my worth more than my own hand, and
Damn, again, the writer coming out.
and and that was about romance, but it's also about career, and it was examining, like, if I'm dating white people, it's because, is there some sort of subtle thing deep in my marrow, deep in my ancestry, that says this will bring me closer to the place that will allow me quote unquote success?
Ooh, yes. I stumbled upon this podcast during an election that toyed with that. And I think it was like this Black guy talking about how actually like the solution and the path is to hold hands, to date, to pursue people outside of our race, because that's how we increase the value, is really trying to facilitate more, integrated relationships and a blend of tones and textures and all these things. And I was so triggered by this. I would love to have deeper conversations on this piece.
Oh, I mean, it's triggering, like when I wrote this modern love piece about that, like I yeah, it was triggering. I got thousands of messages, from you get wedding invitations, like, or like people asking me to marry them, to like death threats,
oh
to
my gosh.
just
All
love
of
who you love, to just like, I feel so seen, you saying it out loud. It's complicated. And at the same time, I chose the word brown in this book because I believe eventually this mismatch is happening. The world is getting browner.
Mhm.
Now, it's not getting browner as far as Hollywood is concerned, as far as like representation is concerned, as far as check signers is concerned. But there is a beauty, I have this, I talk about this crazy delusion that, if every person of color slept with a white person, our kids couldn't hate each other because they'd all look the same, like,
Find other reasons to hate.
oh,
That's
that's
the
interesting. Yeah.
underlying thing. I do sit with a lot of, if we removed race and this focus on racial identity, particularly as prevalent as is in the US, what then would we use to create these hierarchies? Because naturally humans create a hierarchy, whether it's what you're attracted to, or the things that are telling you you're attracted to certain things. And I'm like, okay, what would be inserted in the place of race if that ceased to be such a divisive tool as it is now? And do I have faith that humanity would just be like, oh, kumbaya, let's sit down and sing now? Like we're all one identity. There would be something else. And that book I was just talking about, Sky Full of Elephants, it had me thinking about that, right? Like you eliminate one race entirely, and then what?
You
Right.
find
And
another reason to fight,
yeah, you
which
find
is
something else.
sapiens, right? Like sapiens wiped out Neanderthals, and then sapiens started wiping out similar sapiens.
Absolutely. I think right now I just need to hold my dog's hand and live in bliss with him. And it feels like very great. We live a happy life. Um, he doesn't talk back. Like it's easy. Like this is the best relationship I've ever had. And it's with my dog.
On that note, may we all hold our dogs' hands.
Yes.
How can people interact with you? Please say the website again. Let them know all the things.
Yes, please, please, please keep in touch, reach out. Would love to chat. You can find me on Instagram at Jade to the Nell, JeaTothe Nell. That was like my rap name back in the day. Jade to the Nell. When we come real close, I might freestyle for you.
Yes.
Yes. So you can hit me up there. Website, elizabethminnie.com. You can also follow the journey of our budding publishing company at Elizabeth and Minnie on IG. We're also on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. But yeah, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much for creating this space too. Always love a good chat.
Okay. Thank you for riding with us once again. Again, I loved this convo and I hope you did as well. And I will see you next week. Much love. Peace.